Hello, this is Victor Scargle, Culinary Director for Atelier Fine Foods and Catering and Boisset Collection. We're going to do another recipe today talking about stocks. Can't have a good dish if you don't have a good sauce. Can't have a good sauce if you don't make a good stock. So this time we're going to focus on veal stock. So we've asked our butcher, our meat company, to provide some knuckle bones here. So you can see these are just cut up into pieces. What veal stock offers you is gelatin. There's some gelatin in there, so it's going to give you that nice viscous sauce. But what we do a lot of times as well is we add pig's feet or pig's trotters in there. It gives us even more gelatin. Traditionally, when they made stocks and sauces, they would take and make a veal stock, and at the end of it they would add something like arrowroot or cornstarch or roux, which is flour and butter, a thickening agent to do it. What we're going to do is we're going to use the pork trotter or pig's feet as our gelatin in this to make a nice sauce or stock, to create a sauce. So we've got a big stock pot here. You saw our raw bones, and then we've got some cooked bones here. We browned them up. We want to brown the bones up, and then we're just going to put them into our stock pot. I'm going to make sure that it's not too hot. And the other thing that I like to do so you want to add cold water there. It's obviously going to warm up a little bit, but start with cold water and work to hot. So cold water, bring everything up to a simmer, and work from there. The other thing I like to do though when I'm making a veal stock is I'll add my bones. I add the liquid first, again, so it doesn't brown or burn the bones on the bottom, because obviously that stock pot was warm. Put all my bones in here. I added some cold water, but I'm gonna do half water and I'm gonna do half blonde chicken stock. So chicken stock where the bones have not been roasted at all is going to go into this, and that's going to start out with some protein. It's going to give me a little bit of flavor right off the bat. It's going to really provide a much deeper, richer, flavorful stock. Okay, and you might say, well, I don't have a big stock pot, or I don't have room to store this, or I'm not going to use all that at once. Well, make your veal stock and save it in the veal stock form. Don't reduce it down to what we call a gloss, where it's coating a spoon and is really thick and tacky. We don't want to have that anyway. But then you can take your veal stock, cool it down completely, really quickly, by keeping it in something metal like this, putting it into an ice bath, ice and water, cool it down really quickly, separate it into deli containers or something smaller, and freeze it. Or you can put it in an ice cube tray and freeze it, and then when you need a little bit of veal stock to make a sauce for your whatever you're making, whether it's beef or maybe it's lamb or something like that, you can pull out an ice cube of veal stock and use that, and you've got it ready to go. So when you have time, you make your veal stock, and then you kind of come back and you'll have it when you need it, all right? So I've got some roasted pig's feet here, I've got my knuckle bones there, and I've got half water and half chicken stock. And we're gonna put that on the stove, and we're gonna bring that to a simmer. We're also gonna add some aromatics, and the aromatics that I usually like to use is a little bit of coriander seed, some fennel seed, and a little bit of black peppercorn, okay? I'll also add, a lot of times I'll add some parsley or parsley stems. I've got some beautiful thyme that Joe out in our gardens grew for us. So I'm gonna throw some sprigs of thyme in there. I've got some bay leaves here, some fresh bay leaves or laurel. I'm gonna throw a handful of those in there. And then I've got some mirepoix. So right here you've got your raw vegetables. I've got some leeks, celery, carrot, fennel, and I've roasted those as well because we want that roasted flavor with the bones. We don't want to make a blonde veal stock necessarily. So I've got our roasted vegetables here. And the other thing that we want to do is when we roast them, at the end of the process, we'll take a spoon of tomato paste, or if you have some tomatoes, if it's summertime, you can add some fresh tomatoes. And we would roast that in there as well. You'd want to put this back in the oven after you add the tomato paste and cook it a little bit so that raw tomato paste flavor cooks out, and then you would add it into your liquid here. I haven't done that in this process, but you would put this back in the oven, get a little bit more darker color, cook that raw tomato paste flavor out, and then you'd add it to this liquid. We're gonna add all that in there. A lot of times too, you can see when you're roasting your bones, you have this on the bottom of the tray. This is what we call the fond. It's a lot of good flavor in there. If it hasn't gone too far, that's a lot of good flavor. So you can put this over a little bit of heat, add some wine to that, deglaze the pan. Once you put that on some heat, add some wine, that'll come right off the pan. Deglaze the pan and then add that to your stock as well. So take a wooden spoon, like we've got here, a little bit of liquid, and you can scrape that good flavor right off of there. All right, so then that's just gonna go down there. Got all your ingredients in there, and now it's kind of just that patience of waiting. You're gonna bring it up to a simmer, nice and slow, and what you wanna do throughout the cooking process is grab a ladle, and once it comes to a boil, and just go through, and there's gonna be some fat on the top of it, and just skim that off and let it cook slowly. This is gonna take 6-7 hours to get all these flavors to come together and be nice and dark and rich. After that, if you want to, you can strain it and then reduce it down a little bit more, but you don't wanna over reduce it, otherwise it gets really gummy and tacky in your mouth. So it's better to actually reduce it less than more, because once it's over reduced and tacky and gummy, then there's nothing you can do. But that's a great way to make some simple veal stock. Go down to your local grocery store or butcher shop, get your knuckle bones, have some chicken stock. If you don't want to make the chicken stock, we've shown that in another recipe in another video. If you don't want to make it, you can use some chicken broth that you can buy. You half cold water, half cold chicken stock, add it to your roasted bones, your roasted vegetables, put your aromatics in there, let it come to a simmer, then turn it down low and let it simmer for 4 or 5 hours, depending on the amount you're making. Strain it, then reduce it down a little bit more. You'll have a beautiful veal stock to make any sauce that you want to make for any meats. Thank you so much for watching. Again, Victor Scargle, Atelier Fine Foods and Catering, Culinary Director, part of the Boisset collection.